Hi everyone, this is Mindy Eggen and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to create that really great distressed look for a background in my mixed media card and also doing a little experimenting with distress watercolor pencils. So I had picked out a few supplies that I thought I would use, starting with the watercolor stamp. Now these two are from Stampers Anonymous and Tim Holtz. This is the Botanic collection. I thought I was going to use a sentiment from the Pretty Petals stamp set. I end up changing that. I also have the Lattice tile stencil. And then I have some Distress watercolor cardstock that I already trimmed it down. And I believe I trimmed it down to about 5 by 7. I'll be using my Distress Oxides in Peacock Feathers, Salvaged Patina, Old Paper, Walnut Stain, and Frayed Burlap. So I did speed up parts of this video because really it's to me kind of hard to teach a mixed media background, but I do have some pointers that I want to share with you. So first off, when I want to create a mixed media background or have that really great distressed watercolor look, I am using this mat from Tonic. So it's the same mat that comes on the Tim Holtz glass mat. This is just a bigger surface. And you really want to use this because it allows the inks to bead up. You are going to get a whole different look if you try to do these same techniques on your glass mat. Now, the first thing I did was I smooshed down some old paper. I spritzed it with water and I also spritzed my cardstock, which gave me more of that watercolor wash look. So the key to this is working in layers. This is not going to be something you smush down once and just kind of move on from. You really need to work in layers. So I do a lot of ink smushing on that work surface, spraying it with water, and then smooshing my cardstock down into that. And then you need to dry those layers because if you keep leaving your background wet, everything is just going to start mixing together. You really want to dry everything in between the layers and then go back in, do another smush, and add some more texture. Now you can see how that surface is allowing my inks to bead up. And if you just kind of tap your cardstock down into that beaded oxide, the Distress Oxides, that's what's going to really start giving you some texture to your backgrounds. So as of right now, my background is pretty light. So I started bringing in the peacock feathers. I built up more of that weathered, worn look with the frayed burlap and the browns, and I had that old paper in the background. But here I'm bringing in that darker color. I can't remember which one it is, but I didn't add a ton of water to it, and I just really quick smushed it down, and you can see how that really starts to stand out from the background. This is starting to come together to where I really am starting to like it. For me personally, it really takes a while for me to like a background, but even if it's something you don't like or you're not enjoying, don't throw them away. If you just cut out corners of them or turn them into tags, just trimming them down into smaller pieces, it's going to be a lot more enjoyable and you're going to just start seeing things with the background that maybe you didn't notice before. And every now and then, I may not dry the background completely. I might come in and just dab up kind of the bigger pools of the water or the color with a paper towel. That's totally optional. You can also let it air dry to really get kind of that watercolor look. So here, I'm really loving how this is turning out. I'm going to call it quits on that background for right now as far as adding any ink smushing to it, but you could definitely add more to this. I'm going to start by using this stencil. So this is the Lattice tile stencil. I think it's really great for these type of backgrounds. And I'm also digging out these tiny blending tools. You can see I have not used them before. Simon Says Stamp graciously sent these to me a while back, and I just hadn't had a chance to play with them. They are so stinking adorable, and they fit really nice in your hand. I almost kind of like these better than the regular ones. So here I'm bringing in a little bit of old paper. I am not taping my stencil down at all. I really want the stencil to be more haphazard across my paper than being definite, or I want it to be subtle is really what I'm trying to say. So here I just kind of peeked under the stencil to see how that was looking. It was almost too subtle. So I'm going to bring in frayed burlap and I'm going to add a little bit of that over the areas, very, very light-handed. I'm going to go a little bit heavier handed over where the brown is on the background because I do want it to kind of stand out. I don't want it to be too light. So here again, I am kind of peeking underneath the stencil to see if I need to add any more to it. I'll add a little bit of that brown over the brown area of my background, and then I think I end up calling it good. I did have some texture paste on my desk that I kind of wanted to use, but I really wanted to have a stamped background on this. So I opted to not use any texture paste. So I'm bringing this background over to my Misti stamping tool. I removed the foam insert because this stamp collection, I think it's called Botanic collection, is already foam mounted and I love it. If you have seen any other of my mixed media cards I've done, I do a lot of where I have text in the background, and this has already got the text there. So that was one less step I had to worry about. Plus, it's just a really great image. The shading that's done on this stamp set is amazing. So I am stamping this in the Archival ink in black soot. I actually really wanted to use more of a dark brown. I'm pretty sure I have one, but I could not find it. So I did go with the black, and I am going to ink it up a couple times. I wasn't sure if it was just how the stamp was, that it wasn't coming up super vibrant, or if it was just me stamping it. I don't really want it to be too in your face because I kind of liked that subtleness to it. Now, once I stamped it twice, I'm going to add some splatters to this. I brought this over to my Splat Box and I'm going to add this white splatter from Spellbinders. I mixed a little bit with water and I'm adding that to my background. And I decided I wanted to add a little bit more to it for splatters because, well, why not? So I went and I found my Distress Spray Stain in antiqued bronze, something like that. And I just took the cap off and splattered that onto the background. Then I'm going to just hit this with my heat tool and set this off on the side. Now, I'll be honest, one of the things I really wanted to showcase was how these stamp sets have coordinating dies, and I wanted to die cut out a butterfly or color in a butterfly and then die cut it out. I have all of the sets of these Distress watercolor pencils. Courtesy of Simon Says Stamp has sent these to me, and I just never really had a chance to play with them. But one of the things I really needed was to kind of organize them. I wanted them in rainbow order so I could see all of my reds, my oranges, so I took everything out and I just had to show you this kind of in high speed because I thought it was really fun to watch. I went through and put them all in that order. So that way, if I'm looking for greens or reds, they're just all in one case. So unfortunately, down below in my video description, I have linked the entire sets, but you can pick and choose which colors you prefer for your images. You don't need to have all the sets unless you're a distressed collector, but I did link all of them down below, and then you can just kind of play around with which colors you prefer. You may notice I did not end up using a butterfly on my project, but I still wanted to show you this because it did lead me to another step. What I did is I picked out some colors that kind of resembled a monarch, and I just scribbled them down onto my paper here. I think this is still the Distress of watercolor paper. So I scribbled it down to figure out the colors that I wanted, and then I brought it over to my images, which I stamped in that archival ink in black soot. I'm using a water brush pen. What do they call them? Water brush, a water brush. And I use that to spread the color. So these watercolor pencils, I need to dig these out more often because it was a very enjoyable to spread that color out. If you just kind of spread the color without adding a ton of water, you're going to get some super vibrant colors. I have three of them here that I played around with just depending on how much color I laid down, how hard I was applying that color, or how light-handed I was going. So if you're looking for an easy way to color in images, these are definitely going to be useful for you. As I mentioned earlier, one of the reasons for this video is I wanted to show you that you have these amazing stamp sets from Tim Holtz and Stampers Anonymous. They've been out for a little while, but what is new is that Simon Says Stamp has a coordinating dies for these. And I thought that was amazing because you have images like these butterflies or even that Botanic collection. They have coordinating dies, and I do love to have a coordinating die. Now, I didn't end up using this butterfly, and I preferred to have that kind of floral image just stamped on my background. So I didn't really need the dies at this point. And why does that seem to always happen? It's like when you have the die, you don't end up using it. But when you don't have the die, you really, really want it. Now, all of this experimenting, what it did lead me to was wanting to color in my floral image that I had stamped down. So I brought in some greens. Unfortunately, I did not write down what colors I used. Maybe later I'll try to zoom in on the video to see if I can catch it. But I just grabbed some greens that I thought would stand out and look really neat on my background. I also colored in the flower. I did start kind of getting confused on what was a leaf and what was a flower. So I brought the packaging in and I can see a little bit more definition on the actual front of the stamp than I could when I stamped it on the background. And really, I don't think anybody's going to notice the difference. I think I colored in a flower that was a leaf. I'm not sure. You can see I brought that in for reference. Either way, I really, really loved how this turned out. Now, in finishing with this project, I decided not to use the Pretty Petals stamp set. I wanted to use a sentiment off of there, but it just wasn't vibing for me. So I dug through my reverse sentiment strips and I'm using one that is off of the All the Love reverse sentiment strips. They are, the reverse ones are black with white lettering. You can run these through with foil. This is like a toner printed. So you could foil this, but I really loved that sharp black. So I just trimmed this down into a thin strip. So as I started playing with the design on the front of my card, I didn't like how it was all in one strip. I wanted it to be broken up a little bit more, kind of like that label look. So I brought that back over to my mini paper trimmer. And so now my sentiment is broken up and it's going to say, "You are so loved." I did contemplate putting this in a kind of journal of sorts that I do have, but opted to go to make a front of a card. So I am using my nesting rectangles from Hero Arts, and this helps me pick and choose what area I want to die cut out. But then I did also want to frame it. So I am bringing in this nesting frame die. This is fairly new from Simon Says Stamp. I love it because I love framing things. And I started out with kind of the larger one. I just and ended up going with a smaller one that I die cut out of a matte gold cardstock. And I also die cut out a couple more from a heavyweight cardstock because I wanted to build that frame up a little bit. I'm going to use my Connect glue that I have in a fine tip bottle to glue those two layers together from the white cardstock. And then I will add the matte gold layer over the top. And I'm working on a media grip mat that's going to catch all of my excess glue if I happen to put too much down. And that is just a lot easier to clean up that glue off of the media grip mat than it is my glass work surface. So that will finish off my frame. And I'm going to create a side folding card base from a heavyweight cardstock. I've been trying to get better about adding all of my card fronts to card bases. I'm adding my tape runner to the front of this, and then I can add the front of my card to my side folding card base. Then once that's in place and secured down, I'm going to add some more of that liquid glue back behind the frame, and I'm going to place that over my image. I'm going to really try and pay attention and make sure that the margins are even all around the edges, because you're going to notice if something starts to get a little off, if one side has more room than the other. So I did kind of fiddle with that a little bit, and then once I had it in place, I put something heavy on it and let it sit for a minute. I have a block that I like to put on top of it, but you could stack up your Misti on top of it too to help hold that down. I'm also going to add some black foam squares behind my sentiment to help pop that up a little bit. And then I'm going to offset it. So I have the UR is kind of more on the left-hand side, and So Loved is going to go in just a little bit more. And then I'm going to call that good. So I hope some of these tips have helped you if you are trying to get into mixed media and creating backgrounds. It's really all about the layers, drawing in between each of those layers to help build up that color, that texture, and that background. And if you are looking into the distress watercolor pencils, I hope this has kind of helped you a little bit to decide if maybe you want to test them out. Maybe grab just a pack of a rainbow of color and give them a shot. I hope you found this video helpful. I will have all of my supplies listed down below in the video description and over on my blog. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you again soon.